Welcome to a Sunny Side Up Life podcast, a show for the woman who is ready to live an abundant life full of freedom and positivity. I'm your host, Sammy Womack, a nationally recognized money expert, budgeting coach, and your very own hype squad. I'm on a mission to help you break free from survival mode, gain financial freedom, stay motivated, and focus on what matters most. Join the movement and let's start living on the brighter side of life together. Just a reminder that everything discussed in today's episode will be linked in the show notes. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at A Sunny Side Up Life. If you're ready to take control of your money and need guided instructions, check out my free budgeting challenge by going to asunnysideuplife.com. Now, let's get into the episode. I am so excited to be joined today by Ellyce Fulmore. Ellyce is a queer and neurodivergent financial educator, content creator, best-selling author, and the founder of Queered Co., a financial literacy company. Her approach to financial literacy goes beyond the conventional, focusing on the intersectionality of identities and lived experiences. Ellyce is passionate about helping her online community of over 500,000 find the right tools, strategies, and perspectives to create a life where financial stability and joy coexist. She's also the author of Keeping Finance Personal and one of my favorite people to follow in the debt-free community. Let's welcome Ellyce to the podcast. Okay, welcome. I am so excited to have you here on the podcast. Like I was telling you before we hit record, this has been a long time. You've been on my list of guests that I wanted to talk to for a long time. So I'm very excited. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you so much. I'm so excited too.
Yes. So for anyone who doesn't know your story, let's just jump right in with that. Tell us a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Yes. This is so funny. You think I would have a good, concise version of this story by now, but I'm just like, let me just word vomit for 10 minutes.
I do the same thing.
But I'll try to keep it remotely concise. So essentially, I did not expect this to be my career path. I did not expect to end up in the finance industry at all. My sister's actually an accountant, and I used to think like, oh my gosh, that is like the worst job. I could never do that.
That is so funny. My sister is also an accountant, and I literally went the same route. I was like, this sounds really boring. And now this is basically all we talk about, even when it's not work hours.
Yeah, it's so funny. So I actually I have a kinesiology degree. So I have a background of like competitive gymnastics, and I always thought I was going to go on to become a physiotherapist. And that had been my life path for so long. Like it became my identity. It was like, that was everything I was working towards. And then about partway through my degree, I was working as a physio aide at a physio clinic. And I just realized like this wasn't the career path for me. It just like wasn't what I wanted to do. So that led to this big crisis of, what am I doing with my life? I'm in debt because of this degree. I don't even know if I'm going to use it. I don't know what I want to do now. And so that was really hard. I just went through this period of just not really knowing who I was anymore without this identity of like future physiotherapist. And I took a semester off. I ended up going traveling. And on that trip, I was fully convinced I was not going to finish my degree and I was just going to drop out because I was like, well, I'm not going to use it. I'm already in debt. And on that trip, I ended up deciding ultimately that I wanted to finish my degree and that there were, other career paths that I could go down and I could use that to get into a master's in something completely different. And, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I came home, I finished my degree. And during this kind of process of me trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I was also started on my own financial literacy journey because I had this realization of like, oh my gosh, I have student loans and I'm not even going to use this degree. So at that point, I had $20,000 of student loan debt and then $15,000 of high interest debt. So I was starting to panic at that point, and I went on my own kind of journey of financial literacy at the same time of kind of figuring out who I was. And that, I guess, was the beginning of me being where I am now, and that I really became obsessed with it. And I loved it. I loved learning about it. It definitely became like, it's definitely a special interest for me. And I also just realized how much there was missing from the financial industry, especially at that time. Like it's so much better now. But when I first was learning, it was essentially only like old white men, like were the only ones that had a dominant platform to actually learn from. I know there was other people still talking about it, but I wasn't finding those people. So the books I was reading, the podcasts I was listening to, articles online, everything was from these same kind of voices. And I felt like I didn't resonate with a lot of them. I felt like the advice didn't apply to my life. And it was, I was making changes in my finances, but I was still struggling. Like at that point, I knew all of the things, like I knew how to do things. I knew what I quote unquote should be doing, but I was still struggling a lot with my money. And then, fast forward to graduation, I am still having this, like, I don't know. And I ended up doing more. I did get a job out of university, like a kinesiology job. But that job was actually working at a rec center in the financial aid office. And I was helping, low income families and people with disabilities, like get access to recreation. And so that also like really inspired me a lot. And I guess something I should mention too is in my degree, my major was adapted physical activity. So I had a lot of experience working with people with various like physical and cognitive disabilities. So a lot of my background is like figuring out how to adapt things, adapt information and make things more accessible and make things more inclusive. And that's kind of been like the basis of my financial business as well. So through that, like undergrad and also working in the financial aid office and also going through my own financial literacy journey, I was like, something is missing. And I think that I can fill some of it. I think I can do something here. I never thought it would be my career. I started off more so in like the life coaching route, although really what I was doing was helping university students who felt the same way I did of like, I don't know what I want to do, help them figure out what they might want to do. So like help them figure out career things, help them manage their student loan debt, like things like that. And then once the pandemic hit, I started talking a lot more about the career and money aspects because I knew that was what people really needed in that moment. Like I got laid off too. And thankfully I had an emergency fund, which was really the only reason I was able to continue paying my bills and survive. So I started, sharing that and helping people like apply for the emergency response benefit here in Canada and things like that. And that content just took off and that led to my business.
Yes. That is so great. And roughly what year would you say you kind of went on that like discovering and you're noticing there's not a lot of voices? Like roughly what year was that?
Yeah, I like always try to remember this. And I feel like the memory of my basically, anything that passed a year ago, I'm like, what happened?
Right.
But
I know.
I graduated in 2018 and it was probably like around, I did 5 years for my degree and it was probably around like year 3-ish. So I would say like probably 2016.
That's what I was thinking because I'm like kind of trying to remember what I know about your journey. And that's roughly the time that I think a lot of us, I don't know if Instagram was just at a certain peak that it was at, but that's roughly around, we kind of started our debt-free journey about 2015. And then I think I started kind of sharing 2016, 2017 at first, but it was just kind of sharing, this is what I'm doing. And then people were like asking me advice. And then it just kind of balloons from there. And it's really crazy where you're like, oh, I guess this is my job now.
Yeah, I think at that point, I wasn't necessarily sharing financial content, but I've always made content. So like in the past, I was talking a lot more about like self-love and like, I remember like sustainability. I remember doing like a YouTube video review of natural deodorants and like I did stuff like that. So I'd always been like posting and sharing bits about my journey. But then I think, like the heavy financial content more so came like 2019, and especially 2020. Yes.
And I really remember, I remember a lot of your content during the pandemic and things like that. And that kind of escalating from there, which happened for several social media influencers. They just kind of like, I feel like people either blew up during the pandemic or they were like, this is not my path. And they kind of like disappeared. It was like a make or break for a lot of people. So it was really interesting to watch. But I love how you kind of touched on this, but talking about how there was a certain underserved demographic, and there's several kind of demographics, and we weren't hearing a lot of those voices. And that's really how it was for me when we started. I mean, it was like Dave Ramsey or nothing. I mean, that was basically, I don't know. I didn't know of anybody else. And anytime I said anything about the word budgeting, oh, did you do Dave Ramsey? I'm like, I mean, I guess, is there another option? Like, I didn't know that there was any other option. And so for us, it was like, I was like, I guess this is supposed to apply to me. Let me just try to squeeze myself into this box, I guess. And I guess I'm supposed to get yelled at. And to me, it was always like, well, that's how I was raised. And maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need like a dad, like yelling at me. I don't know. And I just thought, well, that's just what it's about. It's about guilt and shame. And I didn't really question it in the beginning. And I'm like, I'm making progress, so I guess it works.
Yeah.
And now that you get more into it, you're like, oh, that's not okay. Oh, interesting. So I love how you and lots of other people are like kind of going into this demographic that was very underserved, and we're talking about it more. We're serving more people. So you focus on serving queer folks, neurodivergent, like you really got it here. And I love it. And I love your messaging, and I love everything that you share. But I do read your comments sometimes, and I love when you reply to comments and you're like, why does it have to be only neurodivergent people? Like you get those comments. What about the straight people? Do they not need to know about money? People just get real brave in comments.
They do. They really do. The keyboard warriors.
Yes, exactly. And you kind of go after them a little bit, but you're very nice about it. And you're strong and stern, but nice. And I love your approach.
Thank you.
But what kind of financial education do you think? Why specifically? What is different? Tell us kind of about this. Why is it, hey, we need to specifically speak to these folks that are having these different, demographics?
Yeah. So if you like zoom out on my business, the main kind of approach I take is that identity-based approach to finances. So really understanding what your identity is. And that includes so many things. Like that includes mental health challenges you have, your sexual orientation, your race, your culture, if you're a citizen or if you're undocumented, if you have access to housing, like what kind of education level you have, like all of these things. And the reason why a lot of my audience and what I speak to is folks who are queer and neurodivergent is because those are identities that I hold. So I obviously speak a lot more about my own identities.
Right.
Rather than, I'm not going to speak for an identity that I don't myself experience.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, those are the ones that I talk about the most. And I think it's really important to bring those aspects of your identity into the conversation around finance, because those pieces of your identity affect every single choice that you make. It affects how you move through life and like what privileges you have or what barriers or systems of oppression you are subject to and how people perceive you and the opportunities you're given and, all of these things. And so it actually is mind-boggling to me when people don't understand why it's important. Like I recently done a lot of videos in responding to comments about sexual orientation. So many people, I will get this comment on any video that I mentioned that I'm queer or like LGBTQ plus. Someone will comment something like, what does being gay have to do with money? Yes. Like, this is so stupid.
I've seen some of those and I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
Yeah. And like someone recently left a comment being like, my roommate's gay and we spend the same amount of money. And I'm like,
that's not okay.
Literally not it.
You're missing it.
Yeah. And what I often say is that if you don't understand why, you likely have the privilege of not needing to understand. But think about it's so hard if you are someone that holds a ton of privilege. Like if you are like a cis, white, straight man, you will have a hard time relating to any of these things that we're talking about. But basically, like these identities will have an impact on the financial decisions that you make. And I think that it is irresponsible of a lot of financial educators to not at least mention or touch on these things and acknowledge that these have an impact. So like some examples would be, there's a lot of actually like research backing up this stuff as well. Like there is an LGBTQ plus wage gap, meaning that you are more likely to get paid less than your straight peers or coworkers. So, that's, if you're in a queer relationship and both of you are experiencing this wage gap, then you're going to be making less as a household and you're going to have that, wealth gap. Also, if you are a couple that cannot conceive children naturally, then you're going to have to do IVF or do, other treatments, which I know that, straight families or heterosexual couples have to do that as well.
And that's a whole nother demographic. And that's very, legitimate.
Yeah.
And there are people who speak on that. Like, hey, we had to pay for IVF. It's very expensive. We've done it 2 or 3 times or whatever. That's a very legitimate demographic that also needs spoken to.
Yeah. But it's like another thing that's added on top of like, you're already experiencing this kind of wealth gap.
Yeah.
And then also, queer kids are more likely to experience houselessness. They're more likely to be kicked out at a young age, meaning that they need to be financially responsible at a younger age. And they're paying for a lot more things at a younger age that, again, puts them behind financially. Also things like just where you shop, like who I choose, what companies I choose to support. Like, there's certain companies that I can't buy from anymore because they're outwardly homophobic. They're, outwardly donating money to these organizations that are suppressing my rights. So, things like that. And safe spaces is a big one. Like, what spaces can I go into and feel safe and comfortable? Like, for a straight white man entering a bank, he can go into any bank and probably feel fine. But if you are, trying to seek advice on like, hey, me and my girlfriend, we're both women, we want to buy a house together and they're, homophobic, that's going to affect your experience. Or if you're a Black woman coming into the bank and they're racist, it just really affects so many things that you do.
Yeah.
And being neurodivergent is the same thing. But on that level, it's really the way that your brain works is just completely different. And the adaptations and considerations that you need in order to do the same kind of financial steps as someone else is going to be very different. And so those are those like key aspects of my identity that I feel like I cannot even start talking about the tangible financial steps without thinking about how, my identity plays into it.
I love that. And I love that you're a voice there. And I have sent so many people to you for those for each of the, different reasons. And I'm like, there you go here, like follow this person. You're going to love her content. Like, it's great.
Thank you.
Because you're very, and that is a demographic that we need more voices for. And I love that. And I was thinking when you were talking about that, I saw this quote literally this morning, and I'm going to try really hard to get it correct. But it was something about, if you are not hungry for justice, then you are full of privilege. How great is that? I loved that. And that's where I see almost always when it's someone in my comments, it is a white man. I assume straight. I don't know. Just from the anger, let's just go. No, that's not very nice. But just that anger, like that. And they're like, why does it have to be, because my content is specifically for women and a lot for moms. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. That's who I speak to. And like, well, why does why can't it be everyone? And I'm like, okay, but what if it was like flipped the opposite way? And like they had never heard from a straight white man about money ever in their life. And that was a brand new concept. They would be like, no one looks and sounds like me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's people that get mad at there being pride because they're like, why are you get a day to celebrate, being gay? And it's like, well, because every day is a day of celebrating being straight. And so like, it's the same thing with finances. It's like, I don't need to make more content for men because there's an abundance of content out there for them. And so like, you don't need to fit into every space, but there's specific demographics that have no safe space. So like those are, the priority.
I love that when it's like people will attack like Pride Month and all of that. And they're like, well, it's never been illegal to be straight married. Like,
yeah.
So let's work on that.
You've never had to deal with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I love that you are being a voice. Also, we can dig more into your book, of course, and like link that as well. But I think that it's just like, it's changing the conversation, is helping so much. And I also love how much you talk on ADHD, the neurodivergent aspect of it as well. And you were recently featured in the New York Times, and we'll link that as well. Talking about ADHD and money and how there's like an ADHD tax. And I am so interested in that. And it's something that comes up a lot with my clients as well. They're like, hey, what can I do? how, my brain is doing this and it's, so tell us a little bit more about that, the extra cost that can occur because of ADHD or other neurodivergent issues and things like that.
Basically, like you just mentioned, the ADHD tax is additional expenses, or it doesn't necessarily have to be directly money challenges, but like additional challenges that occur because of the symptoms that you're experiencing due to your ADHD. So this can be a lot of different things, but some of the common ones with money are forgetting. So like forgetting to pay your bill and then it's late and then you get a ding to your credit score and then you maybe have to pay a late fee. It can be, like organization things, like just having trouble remembering how much money's in your account, or like organizing where your money should be and then getting an NSF fee because there's no money in your account. It could be losing things a lot and having to constantly replace things. Like I have a friend that has lost her AirPods like 4 times and, just keep rebuying them. That's ADHD tax. Forgetting to pay your parking ticket and, that it triples in it, filing your taxes late. Also, like, my mom is notorious for this, booking things on the wrong dates. So she is like 3 times recently, or like in the last few years, has booked flights for like the wrong dates. Like she knows what dates she's booking them for, but then they end up being the wrong dates. And then, then you have to pay to switch them around.
Before. I booked a flight once, literally backwards.
From the wrong city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, whoa, what is happening? And also I see sometimes with my clients, because, I will go in and like help people one-on-one do their budgets and everything. And they'll kind of come to me with like, they don't know like their passwords, their logins, or all this stuff. To me, it's like a big jumbled up mess. Mm-hmm. And they're like, it's so overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. And this is, this is for a lot of people, but my ADHD clients, especially, they're like, I cannot do it. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. And so we really we break it down. And I'm like, all right, I'll untangle this mess for you. Let's do it and just really simplify it. And sometimes if their spreadsheets, I feel like are too complicated, sometimes there's too many moving parts. They're like, this looks really overwhelming. And they're just, nope, not going to do it. So sometimes we have to like separate things, on different tabs. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes too many tabs is overwhelming. So it's better to do it all in a straight down spreadsheet. And so it's very much like being flexible and kind of working with people. And I think just like adjusting as you go and kind of that trial and error, which also can be overwhelming, but sometimes that's what we need to do to kind of figure out what little hack, what little difference is going to kind of trick your brain into being like, oh, that's not scary.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's like a huge aspect of the ADHD tax itself, is like that feeling of overwhelm. And that's often what actually leads a lot of people to say not pay their parking ticket, because maybe they go and look at it and they're like, oh, I can't figure out how to get on this website, or like, I don't know how to navigate this. And, oh, I have to call someone to get like my number for something. And then, this becomes this big thing that then holds you back. And money is obviously a huge, like you just mentioned, a huge overwhelming task to kind of start doing. And for folks with ADHD, it's more difficult to look at a task and to break it down into all the possible steps you need to do, and then to prioritize those steps. Like it feels like you're looking at Mount Everest in front of you and you don't even know what the first step is. Where as someone who's neurotypical, like, not that you don't still have those challenges, but with a lot of tasks, you can look at something like paying your parking ticket and your brain can break down exactly what you need to do and you can just go do it. And so there's not that same level of like overcoming this giant mountain in front of you. So yeah, like things that you mentioned are great. The breaking down the steps and like really figuring out, what's going to work for your brain, because like you said, everyone's going to be a little bit different. And some people, their level of overwhelm is just going to be at a different point, and certain things will stimulate their brain. Certain things will shut down their brain. Yes. So yeah, it really takes trial and error.
Is there any kind of, I know it probably is going to be a little bit different for everyone as specific needs, but is there any kind of general, more generic tips and tricks that you could kind of pass along, that I could pass along to my clients, or we could pass along to the listeners if they do have ADHD?
Yeah. So I would say, think about how you can add dopamine or fun or enjoyment into your money systems. So what that looks like is going to be different for everyone, but that might mean like really bright colors, color coordinating. It might be like writing things out with a gel pen or like bullet journaling your budget. It could be making a game out of it, having competition with a partner or friend when it comes to your finances, like savings challenges. It could be, doing some sort of like savings tracker that is really fun and colorful. Keeping things visual is like another important tip. Like a lot of folks with ADHD really thrive off of having that like visual aspect. And so whatever aspect you can make visual about your finances, like as many as you can be really helpful. So having like those savings and debt trackers visual, like having maybe, a visual, like here's how much is left to spend in my budget, or like, having those things really front and center, because otherwise you'll, out of sight, out of mind. It can be easy to forget those things. I also often recommend some sort of reward system. So this can be a lot of different things. I often recommend sticker charts. I'm a big fan of sticker charts, but obviously everyone's not going to like those, but I like those ones because I like, buying fun stickers, and you get a little dopamine hit every time you have like a mini milestone, but then you also have like a bigger reward at the end when your sticker chart is full that you're kind of saving up for. So you still have that aspect of kind of saving up and working for something. But then you also are getting dopamine along the way, which can be like a little bit more than just like coloring in something. So I find that's a good one. You can also like plan little activities with friend or partner as a reward. It doesn't have to be a monetary thing either, just like something that feels like special and exciting for you, like some sort of celebration.
I love that.
I find that's really helpful as well. But in terms of like figuring out what works for you personally, what I always say or like start with my clients is think about other systems and areas in your life that have some aspect that's working well for you. So think about like your routine, your bedtime and nighttime routine. Think about your hygiene routines. Think about if you do any sort of like physical activity, what that routine looks like. If you go to school or work, what routines and systems do you have there? Same with like cooking and cleaning your home and like things like that. And then try to pinpoint what aspects of the system are working well, and then see if you can translate that into your finances. So an example might be one I often give is like having your skincare visible. I know that's like a lot of my clients have that, where like their skincare has to be out on the counter, and like their toothbrush, or they'll forget.
My medicine.
So that's like, yeah, exactly.
It has to stay on the nightstand or it exits my brain.
Yes. So that's like an example of, you can say, okay, I do well when I can see something. So then that's like, okay, a visual aspect of my money or having it like right in my face will probably help me. Maybe you're someone who, like, for me personally, my eating habits and cooking got so much better when my partner and I started living together, and we really like bounced off of each other, and we, thrive off of like keeping each other accountable and like divvying up things. And so that was also helpful for me to know, like, oh, when I have like accountability or another person like relying on me or like support in that way, that really helps me. So how could I bring that into my money as well? And yeah, just things like that. It doesn't have to be like a big thing. I know a lot of my clients will say, but like, I don't have any systems, like nothing's working. And I'm like, there's gotta be something small.
There's gotta be something.
Like, it might even be like, for me, if I'm alone, like if my partner isn't getting ready for bed with me, I need to have some sort of stimulation. So I will like watch on my phone. I'll watch a TV show on my phone while I wash my face and brush my teeth. So like, that's something that like, even if I have no other bedtime routine, that's something I know is working. So like, yeah, even small things like that, you can figure out, okay, how can I add some sort of stimulation to my money now?
Yeah, I love that. And I have to do the same. I'll do like music. I'll like turn on music. Like, okay, you're going to listen to music. You're going to do the dishes, get like the house tidied up for bedtime. And I have to kind of like trick myself. You're just going to listen to music and you're going to walk around the house for a few minutes.
Yeah.
That's all. You're going to, we're not cleaning. We're listening to music. It's fine. And kind of trick myself. But I do tell my clients sometimes with their budget, it's like, sometimes you need to like leave it open on the counter. You need to like have your spreadsheet out or your notebook out, or leave it open on the tab on your computer, or where it's there and you see it and you don't forget. And also kind of, putting it on their to-do list. If you have like a daily to-do list or a weekly to-do, I put it on my to-do list. It's like, it's something I got to check off.
Mm-hmm.
And, and sometimes it doesn't get done, just like sometimes the laundry doesn't get done, but it'll be on there again the next day and we'll do it. Eventually it will get done. Kind of putting it on the to-do list helps a lot too. So yeah, there's lots of different little tricks like that. Habit stacking kind of idea. I tell people sometimes, pick a time that you're already sitting still for 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes that's like when you're eating, maybe. I first started mine, I would always do it like with my breakfast. I'm like, let me make my breakfast. I'm going to sit here for 10 or 15 minutes. I can update my budget while I'm, shoveling breakfast in my mouth really quick.
Yeah.
And that would work. So just like little tricks kind of like that, I think help a lot. And also I tell people, don't be afraid. If that didn't work, let's try it a different way.
Yes.
And
100%.
Until you kind of figure out what works for you. Everybody's brain is going to be different. Everybody's habits, seasons of life are going to be different. And we got to keep kind of trial and error as you go.
Yeah. Something I actually say in the book and that I say a lot to my clients as well is, especially when you have ADHD, accepting that like your tools are going to expire at some point. Like you're most likely going to have an expiration date on those tools. And that's just like a normal thing. Like if most folks with ADHD, when you ask them to like think about anything in their life, they can tell you that they've cycled through things, like whether it's like food, they'll have like a food that they love for, 6 months and then they suddenly can't eat it for another year.
I love those reels. It's like when your safe food suddenly isn't safe anymore and then somebody like spitting the food out. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so like, do other people do that too? Oh, okay.
Yes. And like same with hobbies, like we'll cycle through our hyperfixations, but with finances, there's like this weird, like societal kind of expectation that like, you just need to like figure it out. And then that'll be the thing that works for you forever, and it's like, it's not going to. So I think going in with the expectation that like, okay, I found something that works amazing, but it's probably going to stop working at some point. And instead of like feeling really bad about it and going into this shame spiral of like, why can't I suddenly not do this anymore? I was doing it consistently for 2 months. What's wrong with me? Instead of doing that, it's like, okay, my tool expired, just like the milk in the fridge expired. It's totally fine. Let me move on to something else. Or like, it doesn't have to be a completely new thing, but something probably needs to change. So maybe you like change the format of it, you change the color of it, you change the approach, or you do a completely new system and like you cycle through it. And I find that actually helps eliminate a lot of those like moments of spiral, because you can just like, not attach emotion to it and just be like, okay, this is the thing that happens, moving on.
It's totally a season. And that's going to be with anybody. Even for my clients, almost all my clients are moms. And so there's different seasons of our lives when like we have babies and then we have toddlers and we have big kids. And then that's a very different season. And so anybody is going to have seasons of life. We get older, our jobs change, maybe we move, whatever else is going on. And so I think it's more of like, let's build that strong foundation, have that and that long-term goals. And so then everything in the middle can kind of be flexible. And I've actually had so many clients that were like, well, I went through like Dave Ramsey's program and then I fell off the wagon. I've even had a few clients that actually have taught FPU. And then they're like 3 to 5 years later, well, X, Y, and Z happened and we totally fell off the wagon. And now I need somebody to help. I don't even know how to clean all this back up, because I feel like sometimes it was too rigid and they weren't really connected to the ultimate why. And they didn't really have a strong foundation. And they weren't able to flex when life happened, because inevitably life will happen. Something will happen. If it's a pandemic or if you change jobs or anything in between. So it's like kind of learning how to be flexible and learning that there will be seasons and connecting to our long-term goals. And all of that is super important. So I'm always like constantly preaching that as well.
100%. I love that you mentioned that, because that is the issue with Dave Ramsey and other financial educators like that have this like specific method that is so rigid. Like he lays out exactly, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to do these things in this step, in this way. And then it doesn't leave room for that flexibility, for that change. And so as soon as something doesn't make sense with your life, then you suddenly feel like something's wrong with you, because you can't do the system that seemingly thousands of other people are sticking to. But the issue is the system. It's not you. Like the system shouldn't be that rigid, and everyone should not be doing the same system. Like it makes absolutely no sense that like, a single woman living in New York City is going to follow the same plan as like a suburban dad. I don't like it. Just it doesn't make sense.
No, I've had so many different clients. Like I've had several, women that are early 20s, and they're like, I just really want to get like a strong foundation. I'm not sure what I'm going to really do with my career or my family, or I don't know. I'm an adult now, so let's figure this out. And then I've have people that are like in their 50s and, they have growing children and their budgets look extremely different. And $1,000 to a family of 7 is not the same to a family of 1. It's not 100%. The same.
Yeah.
For the past 4 years, I've worked with over 100 clients one-on-one, real women who took action on making big changes to their finances. My coaching sessions are designed to give you completely personalized budgeting support. Together, we'll organize your bills, build better spending habits, pay down your debt, build your savings, and invest for the future. I'll help you get a system in place that will set you up for success for years to come. I'll answer all of your questions along the way, talk you through all of your mindset blocks, and most of all, I'll be there to hold you accountable. So this time will be the time that you'll finally stick to your budget and make those dreams a reality. Visit asunnysideuplife.com/coaching to apply today to see if one-on-one budget coaching is right for you. I'm loving your series where you're kind of pulling these other books and versus your book. They are genius and so great. And I love them so much. And I know you've put a lot of work. Like people don't realize how much work goes into even a simple reel, but one that you have to like do research for.
I have to read the book, the bad book. I have to read it.
You have put hours and hours and hours into these reels. So as a creator, I appreciate, because I'm just like, that's a commitment, man, on a series, and like doing it more than once. That's a commitment. But I would love to kind of, what are some of your takeaways? What are you hearing in the comments? Like, tell us a little bit about this series.
Yeah. So I think that for the most part, it's been very positively received and people are like really enjoying them. Obviously, there is going to be like the defenders in the comments, which I think, it's just funny. Like I got a lot for the Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. I had a lot of people being like, I said he was 1 billion in debt, and I actually made no comments about that. Like I just said he's 1 billion in debt, but I made no like, there was no narrative of like, that's bad, that's good. There was no, like, I didn't put my own opinion on that. But so many people in the comments were like, well, if he's 1 billion in debt, he's got to have way more than that in assets. And so like, you'll never be there. Like, I don't know, stuff like that, which I just find so funny because I'm like, first of all, if you think of anyone who's in debt, most like, or the average person is going to have, their debt is going to be greater than the money that they own. Otherwise, unless they're saving for something specific or whatever. But I'm like, that argument is like, no, he probably has way less than that, which, his net worth is reported to be way lower. So that's just like, things like that is like, that's not even correct. But also, I don't think we need to be defending like the billions of anything is unethical. Like you don't need to have $1 billion and you do not need to be $1 billion in debt. It's way too much. Like on any level, like there's no, and I think it's just funny because there's so many people that they consume this information when they were younger and they're probably like boomers now. Right. And that information, like I will give them credit that it did make more sense back then. Yeah. Like there's still so many problems I have with it, but like, yes, the kind of American dream path was more attainable then, still very unattainable, but so they read it back then. Some of the things worked for them. They saw success and now they're like, what's wrong with you? This is great. It works so well. And it's like, yeah, but times have changed and we can no longer do what our parents did to achieve success. Like the same exact formula is no longer going to work. And there's just so much information that is wrong in those books. I was very shocked by Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I didn't realize that he promotes MLMs, like straight up tells you to join an MLM in the book. And that was like a jaw dropping moment. Also, when Dave Ramsey compared struggling with money or being in debt to being in slavery and like things like that, like that was like jaw on the floor, cannot understand why people are still defending them.
Like, there's a lot of other, there's a lot of questionable things that people are defending right now. So
it's true. People have a hard time understanding the nuance and like separating things. Like we can acknowledge that Dave Ramsey has helped a lot of people and that that's a good thing, while at the same time acknowledging that he's very problematic and harmful and harms a lot of marginalized groups and has a toxic workplace environment, and that those things outweigh the good things. And like, it's very black and white, I feel like, for a lot of people in the comments. If it's helped them, then they're like, it must be good. And there's no argument against it. But yeah, for the most part, very positive. So I'm happy about that. And I think that there also has been a good number of comments of people that didn't realize and are commenting like, oh my God, I had no idea it was this bad. I had no idea they were saying this. Like, this is so shocking. And so I think it's also like more people are talking about it, and it is really opening a lot of, especially like I feel like millennials' eyes, who kind of just like were following the advice their parents gave and like getting the books from their parents, the Dave Ramsey books. And like, now they're like, wait a minute, I've never really thought about this. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not okay with it.
Millennials love to question the status quo, and we're changing all kinds of things. And I mean, somebody's got to do it, right? So might as well. Yeah. But I've loved them. And I was way back, like at the beginning of our journey was like, started with Dave Ramsey, very like drank all the Kool-Aid, did all the Dave Ramsey's way or no way. I was all that. And then I don't know what happened. One day I just kind of snapped out of it, and I was like, wait a second, I have free thought. I can question things. And and now that you kind of see it, you're like, whoa, that was problematic. Okay. Yeah. So I'm loving that there are more choices and there are more voices kind of going into it, and that I'm loving this series. So I hope that you continue to do it. I know it's a lot of work, but it is fascinating to really see it side by side. And hey, there is a different way. Like there are other options. You don't have to be shamed and guilted and yelled at and, I don't know, racist and all the other things.
Yeah. Like for everyone listening, just know that you can learn about finances and see progress with your money and feel good about your money without feeling like shit all the time from like the person who's teaching you. Like, I think that's also where some of the defenders come, is because they've seen positive results, so many positive results. But yeah, like they just feel bad the whole time because they feel so guilty. They're being shamed into change.
Well, that's how you're supposed to. It's supposed to be discipline. Discipline and respect.
Tough love.
And I had somebody come in my comments. He told someone was asking me a question, and this person came in and was like, just look up Dave Ramsey. Excuse me. Dave Ramsey has great examples on that. And then someone else, he came in and they were asking like, how do you not dip into your emergency fund? How do you what do you do to not just constantly empty it? And he came in and was like, have discipline. Like, excuse me, sir, get out of my comments. Just have discipline. Yeah. Okay. And this is the same person who was preaching Dave Ramsey. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that discipline works for you, but that does not work for everyone. So go somewhere else. Goodbye.
Yes. And that's a big comment for like any video I make about ADHD too. It's like, you're just lazy or you just need more discipline. And that's like such a common narrative. And it's just, this is also part of the thing, is that, Dave Ramsey has made finances a personal problem. Like he says, if you're not doing good, that's your fault. Like it's 100% your fault. There's no like acknowledgement of like the outside systems that are actually having a bigger impact. So that's where like the discipline comes too, because it's like, oh, you're doing something wrong. It like, or you're sorry, your money is not where you want it to be. You're in debt, whatever, your fault. Yeah. You need to change.
Just be disciplined. But that's kind of it's the same rabbit hole. I homeschool. And so I kind of go down these rabbit holes of like homeschooling, unschooling, gentle parenting, like all that kind of, that's really what I follow and what I research outside of money. And I see the same kind of conversation of like, well, just smack it out of them. Okay. And that's the same. It's like the equivalent of like the gentle parenting conversation is like, what if we don't scream at our kids? What if we don't just hit our kids? What if we don't isolate them to their rooms and teach them how to just cry it out. That it feels like the same conversation, and it feels like it's coming from the same voices, and it's like the same. And so I'm like, oh, what if I do the same thing with my parenting that I'm also doing with my money? What if I sit with you and help you co-regulate your feelings?
Yes.
And then people in the comments will be like, oh my gosh, just slap it out of them. Just have discipline.
Yeah. But I love that you made that connection, because like so many people's financial challenges probably link back to the way that they were raised.
Yeah. And that's how I related to Dave Ramsey. I was like, oh, I'm used to, like, this is how I was raised to, like, I got talked down to. It was my way or no way. I was used to getting yelled at. I was like, oh, this is how parents are supposed to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. And then I was like, wait. And I don't know, my brain just like instantly snapped out of it. And I like deprogrammed from all of that. And that turned into my parenting style. And I was like, we don't have to yell at each other. We don't have to name call each other. What? And here we are. And some people will be like, well, you're just raising soft kids and you're just a hippie feminist person. Oh, well.
No, you're breaking the cycle.
Yeah. Agree to disagree. So I'm fine. My kids are happy, and my net worth is growing. So doing something right.
Yeah. And we'll see in 20 years what their relationship with money is like.
Exactly. What their relationship with me is like too.
Yeah.
Like, goodness, there's so much. But yes. So I love that we're having these conversations, and I am just so excited for you that you wrote a book. I followed the whole experience, and I know it was a lot for you. I was like just cheering you on as you were writing. I know it was a whole process. Tell us a little bit about what that process was actually like. One of my big goals is one day to write a book, and I know it's huge. It's huge. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, in like every way. Like I used to say it was the hardest thing I've done professionally, because I wanted to be like, obviously I've gone through immense loss in my life and things like that, but it was so hard personally as well. Like, it put a strain on every aspect of my life. The writing of the book itself was actually not the worst, although that was very challenging as well. But I would say like the editing, and then like all of the other decisions and process of like everything that went along after that was even harder. But yeah, it was very difficult. Like, having ADHD and trying to stay focused on a project for like 3 years was a challenge. And I recently actually made this connection at the book launch event that I had, where I have gotten really good at removing the shame around money and acknowledging that like my brain works differently. And so I'm not going to like shame myself for needing different tools or systems or adaptations or whatever. But I very much did not do that when it came to writing. So I had this like perception of what like a good writer, good author does. And I really shamed myself for like not being able to write every day, or to not being able to stick to a schedule. And like, which is so like silly thinking back on it, because I'm like, I knew better. I even knew better from university. Like, I learned in university to like accept that I'm the person who's not going to do an essay 4 weeks ahead of time. Like, it just is not going to work. But with writing, I think I just really, it took me a long time to let go of this like vision of what an author looks like. And so, yeah, I really struggled with that. I also like really underestimated how much time it would take. I thought that I could run my business at the same time, and I could not. I basically was alone like the whole time in terms of like a team. I had a few very part-time employees like right at the beginning, but I ended up laying them off because I didn't have the capacity to manage them, because I was barely managing myself. And then I did have a research assistant who helped with the book. But other than that, I was one woman show. So
goodness,
basically everything in my business started falling apart. So I also was not making very much money. So then that also put like a financial strain on top of the stress of writing the book. I also recently, right before the book started, I had moved cities and provinces. So I was, new city, didn't have friends. So I was very lonely. I had no like writing groups. I had no one to connect to. I was just like alone all day. And yeah, it was so hard. And there were so many decisions to be made, like especially after the book was written and we were editing, I had so much decision fatigue because the sheer number of decisions that I had to make every single day was just astronomical. And I would reach a point like halfway through the day where I felt like I was going to have a panic attack because of how many decisions had to be made. And yeah, it was a lot. And I feel like I haven't even processed the trauma of it, to be honest.
And I really appreciated your honesty, like you sharing the whole experience, because we do kind of have this idea in our head is like, well, an author, like they go away to a cabin in the mountains and they just write for like 2 months. And that's what you have this like beautiful picture. And that's how it has to be if I'm going to be a serious author. And I always think, that's never going to happen for me. Like I'm never going to be able to do that. And so I really appreciated your honesty through it. And I very much relate. I'm currently working on getting my CFP and like kind of doing all that schooling, and, you know, going back to school at 35 with 3 kids is insane to me. And now I know why my parents preached like, get your bachelor's degree before you have kids, because, oh my goodness, this is a whole thing. And so again, like I kind of what you said, I had to really reprogram and be like, I'm not going to be like beautifully sitting in my office, like going through these lessons and taking these beautiful notes. It's going to be very much like headphones in, cooking dinner while I'm doing these classes. And it's going to probably take 2+ years to get through something that, you know, a single man could have done in like 9 months.
Yeah, totally.
And that's just, it is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
This is me.
I mean, I learned a lot. And I think that, you know, if I were to write another book, I would do things a lot differently. I also feel like if you had a strong support system, it would make the world of a difference. So I know that next time, like I will not even go into it without having some sort of team behind me and being able to like really give a lot to them. And yeah, having more of like a friend group and things like that, like would have just helped so much. And I mean, I'm talking about the bad things, but there was obviously also really positive things. Like writing itself, I really enjoyed. I loved doing all the research. I interviewed so many people for the book, and that was amazing. And like, I felt so good when it just came, it just like flowed, you know, like I would write, sometimes I would get on a roll and I would write for, you know, 5 hours straight, and that would feel so good. And I would be so proud of myself. So there were still those moments. And ultimately I'm very proud of myself for doing it. I still can't believe I have a book.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I think that, it was very difficult, but I'm glad that I did it. And I think that it was an important like experience for me to go through.
Yes, it's great. So do you think that you will ever write another book? Are you just like done? You're like one and done. Nope, never again.
I think I will write another book. I mean, really? I already have the next 2 books planned. I don't know. We'll see if that happens.
Are they going to be money books? Or are you like going completely different?
So I guess, I don't know what order they'll end up being. Currently, the second book is another money book. Yeah. But then, I have another book that's completely different, like left field. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. That is so exciting. So what, like moving forward now, the book is, I mean, I know like it's still a lot of work to promote a book, and, you know, I've seen you doing a lot of promotion for it and stuff, but kind of what is next for you and the business and personally, like what's on the horizon for you?
This is a great question that I don't really know the answer to, but
that's okay. That's an answer.
I've been saying to people that after the book was just a black hole. Like I purposely didn't think too hard about what came next, because I knew I was going to be so burnt out, which I was. Like basically since the book came out, I have hardly done. I've just been like in bed on the couch, like so burnt out. Yes. So I'm glad that I didn't like put expectations on myself. But some of the things I know is that I definitely want to do more in person, like public speaking, like those kind of things, which I didn't have an opportunity to do because like my business really grew during the pandemic. And I love connecting with people in that way. It's like one of my favorite parts of what I do. So I definitely want to do that. I want to bring my podcast back, and my YouTube channel, which was never a finance YouTube channel, but I used to have a YouTube channel that was like thrifting and whatever. So I don't know if I'll use the same channel, but bring YouTube back. And I have
That's awesome.
Some like small like digital, like I'm working on a budget template right now, which is taking me so long because I consider myself like pretty good at Excel, but like I'm not like, I'm trying to do really complicated things and then like try to do all these like widgets or like fancy whatever. And so it takes me like an afternoon to like even learn what the formula should be. You know,
I know I have my own set of sheets, and a friend, I actually hired a friend of mine to help me, paid her several thousands of dollars because she put so many hours and I put so many hours, and it was like, and then we kept having to go back and we were finding errors and we're doing updates, and man, it was a task. But I use them every single day with my clients. I have to have, I mean, I do sell them also, but I'm like, that's kind of on the side. Like I have to have them for my clients. And that is a huge undertaking. Like people don't realize like, oh, you sell them for $20. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, I put at least $3,000 or $4,000 worth of labor, not counting my own labor, into them. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah. And I feel like I keep changing my mind of like, oh, I actually want this extra thing. But then that means that the whole sheet needs to change.
Well, it's like, well, so-and-so, like her budget sheets look like this. And then you like find examples and you're like, well, they use that font. I really liked that font. And then you get like decision fatigue and then it's too many. And you're like, all right, I just have to pick away and do it. And
yeah. So that's an exciting thing. And I'm also thinking maybe a membership will be launching soon too.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I have some ideas, but ultimately I'm just like not putting the pressure on myself. I think I need like a few more months of just like kind of doing nothing, like promoting the book and just like
totally understandable.
Vegging out and then I'll get down to business.
I love that. And I love your transparency and honesty about that, because I think there's, you know, that hustle culture is a whole thing. And people are like, yeah, I wrote a book and then I cranked out another one. And then, you know, I did this in the middle. And you're like, whoa, did you sleep at all? Because I require a lot of sleep. I require a lot of downtime.
Yeah. And I just feel like, while I was doing the book, it was like that meme with the dog where everything is on fire. Like literally the rest of my life was on fire in every sense of the word. Like I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't nurturing my relationships. I wasn't like, you know, so I think that's also something that's really important for me to focus on coming out of the book is like, I need to kind of rebuild those areas of my life and also go back to the basics. I think I really want to spend a lot of time solidifying systems in my business that, you know, have never been updated or just like I never really had a chance to solidify because I grew so fast on social media. And I think that's also like the root of some of, you know, the challenges. So yeah, just really taking a step back, which is, it's hard to do without like, you know, I don't have like a consistent paycheck coming in right now. So that's something that's like, it's difficult. It's scary. I definitely do have like a lot more privilege than, you know, other people, in that I do have like a solid emergency fund and I also have like a business emergency fund and things like that. But it's still hard to rewire your brain to be like, you have the finances right now to not work for a little bit and to take care of yourself, because I think we're so used to like hustle culture, like got to keep going, got to keep like replenishing. So yeah, it'll be a good experiment for me, honestly, because I have been working a lot with my therapist on my, you know, unlearning a lot of this, like, I need to be productive all the time. I need to be producing things. My, you know, self-worth is linked to my, this is my work. So
that's it. Same. Yep, exactly. But on that topic, I like to end all of my interviews with asking to kind of encourage people to break free from the hustle culture, because that's what I'm all about here. So I like to ask every guest, what is something that you love or love to do that doesn't necessarily bring you a profit, that you do just for the sake of it bringing you joy?
Yeah, I love playing on my Switch. That's like one of the things. I love Stardew Valley and Zelda are like my favorites.
Yes, I have some gamer kids. I'm not much of a gamer, but my husband is, and my kids are all gamers. And it's like Roblox, Fortnite, like all the things all the time. They're all little gamers. I never gamed as a kid. And then my girlfriend introduced me. She had Animal Crossing on her Switch. And then I was like, wow, this is actually like super fun and like something, you know, as someone who struggles with
relaxing. I'm like, this is something that's like not on my phone. And that's
another rabbit hole that I went down with the whole like homeschooling, unschooling thing, is that like, hey, like screens and technology don't have to be the enemy. And especially during the pandemic, like we bought an Xbox and then we kind of let the kids like a little more free with the screens. And we're like, oh, they still do go outside. Like they still want to. Wait, what?
Yeah.
So, I love that answer.
So yeah, I would say that. And I also love reading. That would be like another big one of my hobbies. And I don't read that many nonfiction books. It's mostly fiction and I like it. I used to be like nonfiction queen. I used to read so much of that. And I find like, well, first off, a lot of the books are, harmful looking back, or like just were not helpful for me. And the approach, like so many self-help books are very like Dave Ramsey-esque of like, this is what you need to do. And it's your fault if you're not like yelling at you. Yeah. So I took a step back from that. And I find like fiction books a lot more enjoyable and also like really allow a break where like I'm not thinking about my business when I'm reading them. Like self-help books, I would constantly be thinking like, is this applicable to like my business? Could I talk about this in like a money sense? Like, does this like, whereas like fiction, I just get lost in the story and
it's okay to do that. And that is great. Yeah. Like that is a huge like permission slip. I think that we have to give ourselves that, hey, it's okay to do things. You don't have to turn everything into a side hustle. It doesn't always have to translate into how can I make a profit from this? And I think that's how we, long term, we keep our mental health better. We don't burn out. And when we do kind of get burnout, we bounce back quicker, things like that. Cause I just think that it's so important, which it does kind of in return actually kind of help you with your money.
I know I was going to say that, but I was like, I won't make it too deep.
No, but it does because like you're not as burnt out. Yeah. And that's what I tell my coaching clients all the time with their money. I'm like, what's crazy is like, once you get your money kind of organized and then like, oh, I have more time and energy and brain space and capacity for like hobby, sleep, friends and family, like, or more work if you want to. Mm-hmm. You can, you have more energy to show up because you've done things that have filled your cup. What a concept. So I just love to kind of like reiterate that. And that's like what I'm all about. And so I always love to get people's examples. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, of course. I love that question.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more about where everyone can find you. Of course, we'll link your book and your social media and everything in the show notes, but tell us a little bit more about where everyone can keep up with you.
Yeah. So you can get my book anywhere that you buy books pretty much. And it's available in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. And I did narrate the audiobook. So
yes, I'm an audiobook person. So I was like, I bought the hard copy because I like had to do the pre-order and do all the things and support. But then I was like, ooh, audiobook. Nice. And I love when authors do their own narrate. It's so much better. Yes.
And there's a lot of sound effects in the audiobook because in the book itself, there's a lot of visuals and like different sections and illustrations. And so I wanted to find a way to translate that to like auditory readers.
Yes.
And so, like each section, like when there's a financial sidebar, when there's an interview box, there's a specific sound effect that goes along with that. So that's like an additional fun added feature my neurodivergent friends and for everyone, but it just helps like with while you're listening.
All about the audiobooks as I can't, like I fall asleep trying to like read a physical book or my brain is like, hey, 5 other things. Let's think about that. And then you're like, wait, oh no, I don't know what I just read. So
I'm like the opposite, weirdly enough, like I do that with audiobooks. I will, unless I'm driving, I love audiobooks, but if I'm doing something else, I will get distracted and like stop listening. But
I love audiobooks because I will be like, cleaning or like painting, doing art, something like that, doing puzzles. Yeah. And I can even look back at like previous artwork, previous drawings and stuff that I did in my art journal. And I can remember which book I was listening to when I drew that specific picture because it like gets so tangled up in my brain. And I don't know, it's really interesting, but
yeah, I love that. And then elsewhere you can find me on Instagram at Ellyce.Fulmore and you can, I'll just let you go to the show notes for that one instead of spelling it out. And then on TikTok, I'm at queered.co, which is the name of my business is Queered Co. And that's also my website. It's just queeredco.com.
I love it. Yeah. So we'll link to everything, especially check out the series that you did like with the different books and it's fascinating. And again, I appreciate everything that you do. Your voice is so needed and appreciated in the space and just thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks for hanging out for another episode of a Sunny Side Up Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and leave a review. 5-star reviews are what help the podcast grow. Don't forget to check out the episode show notes for links to everything that we talked about in today's episode. And if you want to access all of my free resources or you want to learn how to work with me one-on-one, head over to asunnysideuplife.com to get started. And if you want to keep up with me in the day-to-day, don't forget to follow me on social media at A Sunny Side Up Life. Well, that's all for me this week. Bye, guys.